because frankly, I think we have too much entertainment where we solve our problems by just simply blowing them up. And I think that's part of the problem we're having today, is that people have decided that if I have a problem, I just go out and get a gun and the problem solved.
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fandy Show. I'm Sean, and today we are joined by someone you already know for an interview about their new space opera novel, Loki's Ring, out now from Saga Press. And that person is Stina Leicht. Hi, Stina.
Hi, 'tis I, Stina.
So, Stina's been on this show before, and Stina is an author of many books, including the very first novel Stina released that we interviewed her for, which was Of Blood and Honey. But she has also written Cold Iron, Persephone's Station, and a few others. But Stina's been at this for, your first book was 11, right? So 12 years?
Did it come out in 2011?
I feel like it was 2011, but it's been a while.
Yeah, no, it was 2011. You're right. I have a different experience because I got my agent in 2009. The book was already like being finalized and such, but it took until 2011 for it to be published. That's correct.
Yeah. So in terms of raw publishing in novels, your career began in 2011, but naturally your actual writing adventure began much sooner.
Oh yeah. It began in like 2007 or 2006, probably, because it took about 5 years for me to write Of Blood and Honey.
It's a hard one to start with, let me tell you. You did not set it up easy for yourself.
No, I did not. I have a nasty habit of taking on a lot more than any normal person should. I like challenging myself.
You've done that with this one too.
Yeah.
And I will have some questions because I'm very curious about it. So before we get to the book, real quick, for folks at home, if you would like to let us know what you think about this episode or any other ones, go to skiffyandfandy.com/listener suggestions. So if you've got questions or thoughts or whatever, please put them up. We'd love to hear you. And if you've read Loki's Ring, tell me, because I want to know.
Yay.
So anyway, okay, so Stina, Loki's Ring. This is a book that you wrote and have published. What is this book? What is this book about, huh?
Well, it's about a lot of things. It doesn't, unlike Persephone's Station, it does not have a simplistic plot, really. It's about family. It's about found family. It's about mothers and daughters. It's about how relationships aren't perfect, and you end up having fights and disagreements, and the way you last long term in any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage or a long-term commitment among 3 or 4 people or whatever. The way these things work out is that you commit to working on the problems that you have with one another. You have arguments. Arguments have to be okay. It has to be okay. And mistakes have to be okay. Because no human being is perfect. So a lot of this, I love the found family thing. I love it a lot, but I rarely ever see instances of a found family where they hit a snag and things fall apart and then they have to put it all back together again. And I kind of wanted to do that with this. So there's that going on. Then there's also the alien ring world that's out there doing its own alien ring world thing. And so that's part of it. And then there's also the artificial general intelligences and all the things that are going on with them and how they are people and they have human rights and they have a place in society. And there are a bunch of people who don't agree with that, and then they leave the Republic of Worlds so they can be out on their own, humans first and all this stuff. and how those two groups come into tension with one another. So that's another thing that's going on, and I think that's everything. Oh wait, except for the virus. Yeah.
Yeah.
The alien virus thing. Yeah.
Yeah. There's that. That's a little bit of a
Yeah.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Small thing. No, nothing really major happens with it, Yeah. I like to I've been thinking about tricking people into thinking that this book is really just about a bunch of people who go to an alien ring world to go to a cafe to have coffee.
Uh-huh.
Because of the number of times coffee is mentioned in this story.
I love coffee. Coffee.
Like multiple
Coffee's good.
characters have like a relationship to coffee that I was like, yeah, I feel like in the future we're also going to continue to have this because it's very like, did you put the pot on? Yes, you did. Okie dokie, we're good today.
I have ADHD, right? My relationship with caffeine is probably not like yours. I'm just gonna put that out there. It's what I self-medicated with until I got finally diagnosed.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's what actually kept me going.
So there's a personal element there.
Yeah, I guess that's probably what came through.
That's amazing. Because I was thinking just idly about like often when we think of you don't have empires per se, or at least not like empire is not a big question necessarily. But sometimes when we have big space operas, you have these big entities like republics and empires, etc. And it's tea because they want to reference, like the British
British.
acquisition of
Yeah.
tea. But
Yeah.
you've got coffee, and I don't know why, but it just felt very different. The tone, like tea, like it's very proper, it's very imperial, but coffee is like that is the everyday person's beverage, the way it comes across in this.
That's hilarious. That probably comes from Of Blood and Honey, I gotta say. my re- my research for that one. I'll just leave that there.
Oh,
You'll know
fantastic!
what that is.
Yes, yeah, go read that book.
Yeah.
So space opera. So you're writing a space opera. It's got alien stuff. It's got artificial general intelligences. It's got big spaceship stuff and things of that nature. Now, in your career, since I have known you since your first novel, you have written everything from urban fantasy to like epic flintlock fantasy to now space opera and sort of punky space opera. A lot of that kind of stuff in there, right? And
Uh-huh.
I'm really curious as a writer. Do you kind of see yourself as a kind of like genre adventurer?
Yeah. I like doing all sorts of things. I mean, I've kind of always wanted to write science fiction, and I just didn't have the self-confidence to just start off with science fiction because I don't have a science degree and I don't have a background in any kind of science. And in my brain, I have it like pretty much hammered in there that in order to write about science fiction, you need to have some science in it, hence the name. It's in the name. It's in the
Yeah.
name, Sean. In the name. It took me a while to like ease my way into it, but I do like being able to. I don't know. It's like being an actress, right, or an actor. There are actors that will always be themselves in whatever they're in. Like Sean Connery is always just Sean Connery, whatever he's in, right? And then there's actors that can actually be different characters and you don't actually recognize them until you realize, oh wait, I've heard that voice before, right? I've always wanted to be a Meryl Streep as opposed to a John Wayne, right?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to be able to write different genres. I think it's very, I don't know, I just feel like you can be a virtuoso or you can just play the same song over and over again.
And you want to be a virtuoso?
Yeah, I want to go for it, man. I want to try. I mean, who knows if I got it to do it, but at least I will have tried.
You are on 2 books in the science fiction genre now, so
I love it. I'm enjoying it and I'm going to write it as long as I can. But, if they come to me one day and say, okay, we haven't sold enough copies of whatever it is, how about writing something else? I will say yes.
so given that you kind of mentioned you didn't quite feel it seemed to me you were suggesting like when you kind of began thinking about doing this, or at least have always felt this to some degree, like there was like an element of confidence about feeling like you could do this.
Hmm.
Was there a moment either with Persephone Station or this book or even before that where you were like, nah, I got this, like like a button clicked, or it
Yeah,
yeah, really?
yeah. When Persephone Station went out and it did as well as it did, that's when I was like, oh, I guess I can write science fiction.
That must have felt really good then, because yeah, I
Yeah, yeah.
remember the buzz about that book, and yeah, so I mean, it is really nice to watch like your career, to have seen you jump from these different styles of genre, and now
Hmm.
getting to do one of my favorites, which is space opera. So
Yeah.
I'm a big space opera nut, and you did some fun stuff that I was like, oh, Stina, oh, you clever.
Thank you. Yeah, I love space opera. It's so much fun.
So let's get to one of the cool things that you did. You did many
Okay,
cool things, but I want to get to
okay,
one of them. I
okay.
want to talk about artificial intelligence, because there's lots of AI throughout science fiction, computer programs that come to life, blah, blah, blah. There's the different variations of it. But I don't recall seeing a lot of attention brought on the issue you bring, which is that these are treated as sentient beings. They
Hmm.
are beings with they're literally sentient, but then they're also treated as beings worthy of conferring rights to. That they need to
Hmm.
be treated as actual beings rather than just computer programs. And so
Hmm.
I really thought that was fascinating that you presented this political culture in which that is a major political concern of
Hmm.
whether or not you accept AIs as beings worthy of rights or whether you don't could affect where you line up on this political culture. And I'm curious about kind of how you were seeing yourself dividing that or designing that world and that political culture, and where that was kind of coming from for you.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, when you think about it today, if you believe that gay people are human beings who have rights, or women who are human beings who have rights, or whatever marginalized group, right? That's how you stack on the political spectrum. That's how it works. So that's why I replicated it.
Did you think that on some level, I know like science fiction gets this both on a critic it gets criticized for it, but also somewhat appreciative for it, of the thing where like SF can take these social issues, but like we're doing it with things that don't exist. And so there's like
Uh-huh.
a little barrier put in where it's like, oh, you
Mm-hmm.
forget that the real world is what this is really an analog to. Did you find
Yep.
that that was part of what you were doing too?
Well, yeah, in a way. I mean, I think a lot of what I was doing with it was definitely a commentary on the political situation right now, honestly, particularly in regards to libertarians. They drive me nuts. But because it's the most selfish. I mean, they are the vampires of the political system, honestly. They don't contribute anything. They don't produce anything. They just take away from everybody. If you read the book, Libertarian Walks into a Bear is the title of the book. Illustrates it perfectly. they they didn't want to support have they decided to have a libertarian town, and when they did their libertarian town, they did not want to pay taxes to the city at all. So the city didn't have a fire department. The city didn't have police. The city didn't have a library. The city didn't have anything. So it was just a collection of people living in a hovel, praying that they would not have a house that burned down, or a bear who would just walk into the house because there was nobody to help them that they didn't bring in from another city. So they ended up having to use resources from other cities because they didn't have them in their town, right? So that's why I call them the vampires of the political system. They don't believe in civilization. They don't believe in contributing to civilization. They don't believe in contributing to the commonwealth of everyone. So that's why they're always my bad guys. Because selfish bastards. That's just me.
Well, I think that's really interesting because there's a great deal of sort of political intrigue in this, and complexity because
Hmm.
of the two sides that now exist. This republic, which has its own council of sentient beings that kind of make a lot of determinations, And then the other side that's like, now that we're basically genocidal, you will not have any AI or anything. But they've also like gone off over there, and then occasionally they meet up, and then it creates conflict because naturally they have very different views about what qualifies as a person. And that creates many of the major conflicts that occur in this book, even when things shouldn't be a conflict at all. When they should be like, maybe we should just set this bullshit aside and deal with this more serious problem. No, no, we won't do
Mm-mm.
that. And
No.
I love your exploration of that. I thought that was really interesting, of trying to look at these two diametrically opposed groups trying to deal with each other and how they actually don't or do in certain respects. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of the way you were playing that into the book, in a book about, to some degree, weird alien stuff.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to, it's really easy to write a book, particularly a space opera, where you just blow shit up, right? Oh, I have a problem. I'm just going to blow it up. Boom. Right. So I wanted to write a book. I wanted to start writing stories about people who resolve their problems in other ways. Because frankly, I think we have too much entertainment where we solve our problems by just simply blowing them up. And I think that's part of the problem we're having today, is that people have decided that if I have a problem, I just go out and get a gun and the problem solved. But that's not how problems work. You get a gun, you shoot someone, and you have more problems, is what happens. Wars cause more problems than they solve. And we need to, as humans, practice coming up with solutions to problems that don't involve guns. We need to work out how to argue with one another and how to resolve situations, not just come to compromises, actually resolve problems. And we need to work on resolving problems rather than pretending that they don't exist and just sweeping them up under a rug somewhere. Because I don't know if there was a study done at MIT, and they discovered that PTSD has a genetic element. They've discovered that you can, yes, trauma inflicted upon one generation will go down into the next generation. So when you think about it that way, think about what happened with the Irish. Think about what happened with Black people. Think about all of the trauma that has been dropped on Vietnamese, on all these different cultures, like all of the trauma that has happened to indigenous peoples. All of that is there. It's there forever. It doesn't go away. So we have to resolve this shit, and we have to stop traumatizing one another. We need to start solving problems. So the only way you do that is by imagining what possible answers there might be, right? So that's why I want to write stories that resolve problems in other ways. And, I realize I've written a lot of military science fiction and fantasy, and that's fun. I get it. I get it. Bang Bang You're Dead is fun, but you've gotta grow up, and you've got to do more and learn and stretch and grow. And that's what I want to do. I want to have a positive effect on the world. I want to leave behind a world that is better off for my having been in it, right?
Yeah.
That's my goal. So that's what I want to do. I want to help people imagine solutions to problems that don't involve violence.
That's interesting. I was not expecting that answer, because this makes me now think about positioning this particular work within some of the conversation happening in science fiction and fantasy currently, which is about. I don't want to use the hope punk thing, because I don't think that's specifically it. It's more about the way in which we deal with conflict in stories and other
Mhm.
ways of telling stories in which
Mhm.
conflict is not necessarily, big, massive, boom, boom conflict, but more subdued or more complex conflict that requires other methods of dealing with it, or maybe
Sure.
resolved in different ways. And it seems to me that it's, whether you did that intentionally or not, you are now part of that conversation with Loki's Ring.
Mhm. I did that intentionally.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So on a different level about the AIs, to kind of go back to the AI, I love this idea that you like partner with an AI
Mhm.
as like a, essentially like a parent.
Right.
I'm really curious where this idea came from because I don't think I've ever seen like I've seen like robots that are like have an AI inside it and like you treat a robot like like a baby because it's literally a baby and then it grows up or whatever.
Hmm.
But this is like feels more intimate. Like
Uh-huh.
it's in you. Like you're where did this come from and why Stina?
Why, Stina? Why? Um, I blame Ted Chiang. I read one of his short stories. I believe it's called the lifespan of software
Software
objects.
objects. Yeah.
In it, he talks about how the AGIs characters are raising them but they're in like little robots or whatever. And like at the end, there's like a little essay about how AGI, if it were to exist, would need to learn in much the same way a child would need to learn, right? Because one of my majors that I went through was psychology, and perception is a very important. I had a whole semester on perception. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but the human brain actually can handle way more information. It handles a lot of information and sorts through all kinds of things and makes decisions based on limited portions of information. But there's so much information that we take in and so many decisions that we make that we don't even think about, that they cannot make. I mean, their AI is narrow, okay? First of all, AI is just a thing, an algorithm that does one thing. It might be that one thing might be to construct sentences that sound like language, but it is not sentient or sapient. It's none of those things, right? It just does the one thing. It's what it's designed for. That's all it does. And artificial general intelligence would have to have the capability to do what our minds do, which is to take in lots and lots of information on all these different levels and then make decisions based on all of these things. But if you're training an AGI, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the human brain that is, we're unaware of it. It's just there. Like, for instance, they've been using AI to make decisions on things like job applications, to sort through all of the job applications and then come up with the best possible candidates. Well, they've since discovered that these AIs are extremely racist and sexist.
Surprise.
Surprise! Strangely, if you have someone who is white and male and they are designing a program, their perspectives will go into that program if there is no representation of other groups in it. And that's the biggest problem that American tech has right now. They have a problem with diversity. They don't have enough diversity in making the decisions on what these software programs do or anything like that. But they've also gone back and tried to make that not be a thing, right? So they don't even they take out the gender modifier, right? Well, okay, it can't be about gender because we've taken that out of the equation. Data comes back and it is sexist and racist still, because there are other factors that are in. This stuff is hardwired into our society. Racism is hardwired in it. It is a pattern that is there, and whatever AI you come up with, it will recognize it immediately because it's designed to recognize patterns, and it will go along with that. So that's like a big deal. So I was thinking that after having read that story and trying to figure out how to train an AGI, it would be just like raising a child. So I just thought, and I think, I want to say he mentioned something in the essay, like it would have to be something like deep level observation of how human beings make decisions. And I'm like, you don't get any deeper than the back of somebody's head.
Yeah.
So that's why I came to that conclusion. And I thought it would be kind of cool as a metaphor, so to speak, of motherhood.
Fascinating. What happens to AI as a consequence of this is that, of course, they can be just as well adjusted as anybody else, but they can also
Also,
deal with
not
very
be.
serious trauma.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so you actually have in this story, not it's not a huge component to the story, but it is part of the important component of a character's life where there is an AI who's essentially in like an AI mental health care facility getting help so that they aren't a danger to other people or themselves. I thought that was really interesting because it's like you thought about if an AI is going to be sentient and is going to have qualities that we would recognize as sentience as humans, they are naturally going to have occasionally the same kinds of issues we sometimes have in terms of our psychology. And I
Uh-huh.
thought that was really fascinating and also a little terrifying because AIs can be quite powerful.
Exactly. As well you should be. And that's why there is a center that is designed to deal with, because as a she's she doesn't seem very, I mean, she's friendly, she's fun, she's got a sense of humor, blah blah blah. She doesn't seem like she'd be dangerous, right? But the problem is she doesn't understand consequences. And if you have an AGI that doesn't understand consequences, that's going to be some serious problems. That's seriously
Yeah.
dangerous. I mean, really, you don't have to be a psychotic,
Yeah.
you just don't as an AGI. You don't, right? My mind is going, Dave, is not necessary
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
dangerous. Yeah, they can be friendly and happy and then, watch you walk into vacuum and be perfectly fine with it because they don't get it.
Yeah, yeah. Normally we'd think of like AI as being scary thing,
Hmm.
right? That I was thinking of like Colossus, the Forbin project, which we've talked on the podcast, where like they make an AI in order to like stop the Cold War, but then the Russians and the Americans are making the AIs together, and that the two AIs communicate with each other and go, wait a minute, these humans are going to
Are
destroy
the
themselves,
problem.
so let's take all the weapons away from them, and we'll be in charge now. Which
Yeah.
is it's just scary because they
It's
have all the nukes now.
terrifying.
But
Yeah.
here you've kind of taken a more optimistic route of like, even when AI have issues in terms of their decision making or their emotional states, they can get help.
Hmm. But it's probably pretty unlikely because I can't imagine, I don't know. It would take a level and skill of, it would be a pretty massively, I mean, reprogramming that would be quite the undertaking
Yeah.
because the way it's designed is you pair with them for a few years, like 5 or 6 years, and then they are taken out of the drive out of your brain and they're put into whatever situation that they're designed to take over, right? Whether that's in a starship or in a robot body or whatever, right? And from then on, they are self-programming. So all of the millions and millions and billions of layers of code that you'd have to sort through to figure out what was wrong, that sounds pretty daunting, in my opinion.
But we could do it, Stina. We could do it.
Okay, we can do it. We can
We
do
could
it.
do it. Come
All
on, we
right.
could help. We could help these AI that have trauma and need help. Come on, we could do it.
Yeah. Why not?
So okay, so let's look at this a different thing. So you've got ring worlds, or
Uh-huh.
a ring world, I should say, rather than
Yeah.
like dozens of ring worlds. I love the ring world idea. I love that your ring world's weird and is unusual. And I'm
Uh-huh.
really curious because obviously ring worlds are not a new concept in science fiction,
No.
but yours is like it's a strange AF ring world
Uh-huh.
in lots of ways, including like I love this little detail you put in where you were describing the foliage as like spiraling around to get the sunlight in a
Uh-huh.
certain way, and
Uh-huh.
I just thought that was a cool little detail. So I was curious where in general you kind of were pulling your way of approaching the ring world from. What was your thinking process as you were saying I'm going to do an alien ring world?
Well, I mean, as far as the plant life was concerned, the sun doesn't move, right? It just stays in the one position in the sky. Therefore, that means that a shadow will be a shadow always, a shadowy area. There will be no sunlight in that shadowy area ever. The sun doesn't move. So if the sun doesn't move, there's no reason for a plant to grow there and be in that spot. So all the plants have to be cooperative with one another, as they are in real life anyway.
Yeah,
They have to share the sunlight. So, some plants grow on each other to get boosted up. They hold each other up so they can get the light, or whatever. So that was my thinking on that one. I'm not sure that I thought as deeply on that as you probably would have to, because I had a lot of other shit going on, but
Sure.
that's where my head was with that, is like there would not be any sunlight in these certain areas, so that would mean that the forest would look very strange. It would be
Yeah.
patchy. There wouldn't be any ground cover. It would just be very strange. So that's what I was thinking on that front. And then the mountains and all that stuff is just standard ring world stuff. But I studied the classic ring world thing because I didn't want to go too far away from the physics of it, because that had already been done, and I didn't want to offend anybody who had their ring world takes, right? Because physics. And I
Sure,
was like,
yeah.
okay, so that's fine. That's what I went with. And but at the same time, I was trying to think about it along those terms of, again, the sun doesn't move, so the plant life wouldn't look the same, and that would have certain effects. You wouldn't have, there's no moon, so there's no tides. That's what I was trying to think. Those are the lines that I was trying to think on when I was designing that particular space. How successful I was is a whole nother thing, but
I
that's where
mean,
my head was at.
I really enjoyed the mystery of the sort of alien culture behind the ring world, and then obviously we're learning some of that through the ring world itself. Because that was my big question. As soon as you mentioned ring world, I was like, okay, where's this going, Stina? Because it's a ring world. What did Stina do? And then, yeah, apparently the aliens they're different.
Yeah, the aliens that designed the actual ring. Can you just imagine the amount of resources that you would have to just take an entire solar system and go, okay, we're just going to take all of your elements and all of your resources and put them in a big box over here. And then your sun's right there. And now we're just going to put it all in this big ring and like sprinkle it all around. What kind of power would somebody have to do that? It's just insane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the level of technology that that particular set of aliens has is just unimaginable in comparison to everyone that's living in that universe. So, they are the big scary,
Yeah.
honestly, as they would be.
There's almost an element of that of, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to suggest that the book is necessarily explicitly exploring this, but there's was it like Clark's third law, like any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I was thinking about, there's that line about how there's a character of Mother. I won't ruin anything about Mother, but we learned something very important about Mother. And there's an element of Mother where I'm like, Mother's trying to explain this thing, but the way Mother's explaining it is like, I recognize you are humans, and any words I use are inadequate because your language can't account for this yet. And it's
Hmm.
almost to this point of like, I'm imagining if you and I went back to like the 1500s and throw out all the things about diseases and like, that, but we were trying to explain a cell phone to like a French king. Like,
They'd be looking at it like, it's magic. It's a
yeah,
box. I mean,
like, let me explain what a circuit board is. Like, they don't even know what that means. Yeah.
no, no, because you'd have to start with electricity, and they don't know what that means. Yeah.
Right. It's interesting how even something as simple as language can be a barrier between, the completely rational and reasonable and things beyond mere understanding.
Oh, absolutely. The connection between language and the brain and forming certain concepts and stuff is like extremely fascinating. Extremely fascinating. There was like some story on NPR that I read once upon a time that was about this man who was deaf, and he didn't get an education, so he had no language skills effectively. And then he went through a program that taught him language skills as an adult, and they interviewed him afterwards, and he was like, and they're like, what is it like to exist without a language? And it was just a fascinating story, just a very fascinating story. And it was like, I can't explain it to you because there aren't any words for it, right?
Yeah. That is wild.
Yeah, it completely screwed with my brain. It was just like, whoa.
Yeah, he would have to explain things like visually.
Uh-huh.
But even then, there's an assumption, like, even though we work visually, like you and I, Stina, we operate very visually in the world. But
Uh-huh.
even still, like, that would still be have to taught. You'd have to teach how he understands visual narrative to everybody
Hmm.
else. Like, so even that doesn't fix your problem. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think hard about that kind of thing. In the next book that I'm writing, there's going to be first contact and like all this stuff. And I'm having to think about that stuff. Like, how do you communicate with somebody who is just so very different? You not only don't have a language in common, you don't have everything is not, you know,
yeah,
everything's different. How they perceive and how they communicate, and you know, yeah, it's just like a whole thing. I mean, and that's where the emissaries come in again.
yeah. Well, that's exciting. Out of curiosity, have you watched Star Trek Discovery?
Yes, I love Star Trek Discovery.
All the way up to the through season 4
I believe I have
with
seen it all the way
the
through.
big aliens who like have pheromones and stuff. They have the giant black hole toilet that swallows worlds.
Oh man, maybe I haven't seen the fourth season.
Okay,
Oh, I gotta see this. This is
the
gonna be great.
you should watch based on what you just told me about the
Uh-huh.
thing you're interested in for this book. I'm not suggesting it's going to influence it, but I think you would be really fascinated by what season four's big. I don't want to say big bad because that's not right. Big mystery, big scary
I
is.
swear I've
And
seen it.
oh
I
boy.
swear. I swear I've
Well,
seen it.
maybe you blocked it out because it's pretty intense. To
Yeah, I
say
remember it being pretty intense. I'm a huge Trekkie.
me too. I mean maybe not quite as much as you, but I'm pretty up there. I remember watching one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek is from season 4 of Discovery, which
Hmm.
is precisely this thing we're talking about, which is how they begin to figure out how to communicate effectively with these beings.
Yeah.
And that to me, I thought I wanted more. I was like, you could have dumped half the rest of the season and just made this season more about this stuff because it was utterly fascinating.
But I'm gonna rewatch it because I am not remembering it for whatever
You will get a
reason.
kick out of it then.
Yeah, yeah. I need to do that. But I have to say Strange New Worlds is my favorite Star Trek.
I haven't watched that yet, so I will put that on my list to watch.
I adore it because it has that hopeful edge to it, and it has that whole people being the best they can for people. I love that shit. I just love it. Ted Lasso is my jam. That's I love Space Daddy.
I will say that I appreciate so much about much of Star Trek that it is unrelentingly hopeful that we can find solutions to many
Yeah,
of our problems.
yeah. It had a huge effect on me. Clearly, because again, I want to think positively. I want to be hopeful because again, you'll find solutions if you're hopeful to problems.
Yeah.
Whereas if you approach them as if you're just reacting and trying to save, yourself and protect yourself and avoid problems because there can only be problems, you'll only ever see problems. You won't see
Yeah.
the potential for good things. And I think it's so important to see the potential for good things.
And this is related to your book, by the way,
Yeah.
because you do this thing. You don't make life super easy on yourself when it comes to writing because you love to push in terms of the perspectives that you explore. And in
Uh-huh.
both Persephone Station and this book, you've gone into exploring a very multi-ethnic, multicultural grouping of individuals. I think off podcast you use the phrase "spaces for everyone,"
It is for
which
everyone.
I was hoping you could talk a little bit about not necessarily like why'd you do it because I know why you did it, Stina. Like this is what interests you. You wanted to imagine a more interesting future where we're all present. But I'm curious about like what was the complexities of trying to imagine that and put it together and write all of that, especially like imagining different accents and all of these different things coming together is not a thing most people do.
Well, I think most people should do it. That's just me. Some of it is I hired a sensitivity reader to go
Okay.
through and make sure that everything was according to plan. I feel like that's extremely important. Your publisher doesn't pay for that, you pay for it. So, and it's not cheap. And I understand not having enough money to hire someone, but if you are going to do the job, you have to do this. You have to do this if you're a white person. You just have to. If you're going to write characters who don't look like you. So I took workshop classes about writing together and read books and do research, and I always look into the backgrounds that I select and make sure that everything is right, and then I make sure that the sensitivity reader has a specific background that matches up to that. So yeah, and the sensitivity reader that I had for this book was great. She was wonderful and so good. Her name's Georgina, but I can't remember her last name right now. But she's in the acknowledgments. She's really easy to work with, and she's just marvelous. But a lot of it is just a matter of research, and I love doing research, as if you couldn't tell.
No, never could tell that Stina likes to do research.
I just love being curious about the world and how things work and why they work and how people are, and it just fascinates me.
That leads me to some like particulars, because I know that you even explored, I don't know if the right phrase is like alternative relationship structures. I guess it'd be and I thought that was also really interesting, because it certainly has come up occasionally, but it's usually presented as like exotic, or like it's different. Look how different it is. Like, oh,
Yeah.
science fiction. It's Philip K. Dick. He took acid, and so now he wants to be different. In this, it came across as very, yeah, that's just the thing that is over there. Yeah, they're doing that. We're moving on now. Like,
yeah, because a lot of this it's about what if there was a world where being female or being LGBTQ plus, none of those things were a big deal. What if that was just accepted? You are a human being, you're accepted. Boom. What is life going to be like in circumstances like that? And that's all I wanted to say, was that this is a world where those problems aren't problems. Those are just how people are. And it's accepted and it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with it. And again, space is for everyone. And just existence is for everyone, right? And
yeah.
I feel like if we can't imagine having a space where none of those things are an issue, then we can't have it in real life. So let's pretend like there's a space where those things aren't an issue, and it's super far in the future. So why the fuck not? I mean, they've figured out freaking faster than light travel. If they can do that, they can figure out how to have a society where everybody's accepted. I mean, that's dead easy, comparatively speaking. So yeah, that's the world I wanted to kick ass in.
You're not wrong. By comparison, dead easy, because technically FTL violates the known laws of physics based on every method we have.
Although they are thinking that maybe it might be a possibility after all.
Yeah.
So
I know there's talk about the Alcubierre, which is the version of a warp drive, yeah.
yep,
And there's some other weird stuff going on with quantum physics that,
yeah,
oh my goodness.
exactly. So who knows?
One day we're gonna find out that like black holes are secretly just like all connected to each other, and they just we're gonna open up a whole world where we're just meeting like aliens that are shaped like toasters and all kinds of stuff, and that's gonna be our future.
Yeah, some people are gonna lose their shit.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
If aliens are listening to this now, please come. I would love to meet you. Like, I'd like to sit down, we can have some coffee or another beverage of your choosing, and we can just hang and like talk about existing.
Peace, love, Dove, and Peter Frampton.
Ah, that'd be really good. So you had mentioned you're working on something else. I imagine that's fairly far down the pipeline, but is there anything that you're working on next that you can talk about other than you're writing a thing?
I'm writing a thing. I think I can tell you well, no, I don't know if I can tell you anything right now, because everything's not defined in legalese at this point.
Okay, so secret, super important project from Stina Leicht.
Yeah, there you go. So there's that. But I can say there will be more science fiction from me, and I'm enjoying it. It's successful. So I can definitely play in this particular sand pit for as long as I want at this point, and that makes me very, very happy.
Please keep being in this sandpit. I'm enjoying this quite a lot.
Yay! I'll stay there as long as there's not what is it, Sorlock at the bottom of it?
A sarlacc at the bottom? Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no sarlacc pit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. None of those. I don't want any of those in my sand pit.
Me
But
either.
yeah.
So if folks want to find you and your work, where would they go?
See, I have a Patreon, which you can actually find via cslight.com. You can probably find your way around the internet to me via that. That's my website. I'm also I'm at Wandering Shop on Mastodon, and Instagram is like one of my favorite places to be right now. I've been snapping ridiculous pictures of toys and making up stories about things. That's been pretty fun.
And that's all Stina Leicht, right?
Yeah, that's just Stina Leicht. Leicht is my last name. So.
Well, Stina, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you. You're just lovely, and I love you, Stina.
Thank you for I love you too, Sean. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. So for folks at home, you need to buy Loki's Ring immediately. Go buy it. Put all your monies in it. There's also an audiobook that you should also check out that is, I am told by Stina, exceptional, because Stina had a hand in choosing the narrator for it, and it's fantastic. So go get that. They're all there. This is from Saga Press, but you can find this book pretty much anywhere you buy books, in both ebook and physical and audiobook. So buy it.
Yeah. Or Sean will stare at you, with narrowed eyes, and that would be just the worst.
It would be, very much. So for folks at home, if you want to find more about Skiffy and Fanty Show, you can go to skiffyandfanty.com, obviously, and get all our socials at our link tree, which is linktr.ee/skiffyandfanty. We also have those listener suggestions at skiffyandfanty.com/listener suggestions. You can subscribe to the newsletter at skiffyandfanty.com/newsletter, and we have a Patreon at patreon.com/skiffyandfanty, and we like 5-star reviews on iTunes because that's legally one of the most important things you can do, theoretically. Me, I'm on lots of places. I'm at SeanDuke.net. I stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 Central p.m. at Alphabet Streams on Twitch. I'm at patreon.com/joyfactory, and I'm on Linktree on various socials, including Wandering Shop as well. That's at linktree/SeanDuke. So that's all me. And so I now need to make it awkward. I will let you know that this entire session, Stina, I have had in the back of my head on a 1 terabyte SSD, an AI that I have now partnered with. His name is Bob.
Oh, okay.
He only makes coffee.
Congratulations, Bob, who makes coffee. Yeah. Congratulations to you both. Cool.
And on that note, awkward ending and scene. If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.